to allow much more amount of ultraviolet rays to reach the Earth crust surface. And then the high levels of ultraviolet rays also makes damage directly to photosynthesis. You know about the photosynthesis, diba? Making of organic molecules, no? Especially mga prutas, will become food ng plants and animals. So other effects of ultraviolet rays, high amount of ultraviolet rays because of depletion of the ozone layer, reduces the growth of plants and mga crop yields. Crop yields. Mga bunga nila, so magiging decrease ang yields, mga harvest of the crops. But we have to take note, biologists also discovered that plants can also have protection against the worst effect ng ultraviolet rays. This protection comes from the natural plant na chemicals, ang tinatawag nila phenolics, no, chemical substances. So these phenolics act as natural sunscreens. They are going to absorb ultraviolet rays, pero hindi nila ina-absorb yung wavelength needed for photosynthesis. Kasi yung sa ultraviolet rays, ang ina-absorb ng chlorophyll, yung wavelength, usually red light, wavelength of the red light. Just as human pigments, diba, ang ating protection against the ultraviolet rays is because of your tanning, yung tan, yung color of the skin, no? Para siyang sunburn. That can also be a form of protection against the effect on the skin. So same also with mga skin pigments natin. Ang skin pigments is produced by produce yung melanin. Kung maraming melanin, the darker the color of the skin. So depende sa ating races, no, yung mga black, no, mas mataas nilang amount of melanin, kaya ang color nila is black, ang iba very tan. Yung mga one of the effects of the glutathione, magpa-inject ka ng glutathione or you're going to intake glutathione, it's pinapababa ng amount of melanin. Kaya pumuputi yung mga babae o yung mga homosexuals, no? So same also with plants, they have varying levels of chemicals, no, in order to protect them from the ultraviolet rays. Some plants, typically from mga tropical areas like sa Philippines, mas mainit kasi, no, sa atin compared with the other areas sa Earth. And also plants from the high altitude mountains, sila yung very, I meant to say very, ano tawag yan, the right term, very sensitive to ultraviolet rays. But others only produce sunscreens when they are exposed to high levels of ultraviolet rays, equivalent to tanning of humans. So this leads to another question. If the plants would produce sunscreens based on their exposure, how are they going to detect the exposure? How are they going to detect the ultraviolet rays? So ang plants, they have what we call natural proteins. So meron silang proteins na in order to detect the ultraviolet rays, meron silang tinatawag na ultraviolet violet na resistance locus 8. Ang plants na lack no ng UV R8 or ultraviolet resistance na locus 8, they cannot produce what we call yung phenolic compounds. No? Hindi sila makaproduce ng protective sunscreens. That's why they can be damaged because of too much exposure to the summer. Usually summer sunlight ang pinakagarabe. And then this ultraviolet na resistance locus 8 na protein can also interact with the other proteins, and then ina-absorb nila yung ultraviolet rays, and then that ultraviolet rays is accumulated in the nuclei of the plant cells. And this is a necessary step in the chain of responses that allow the plants to protect themselves against the ultraviolet damage. So ina-absorb nila, and then that ultraviolet rays will be accumulated in the nuclei of the plant cells. Yun ang kanilang way of protection. So how can plants get sunburn? How can they recover from sunburn? So second question. So as summer comes to close, diba, mas malapit ang summer, no? The burning question among mga gardeners, mga planters, and what to do about sa mga heat damage sa mga foliage. yung mga leaves. No? Burned leaves and sa gardens usually look awful because of the constant exposure to hot weather, no, dry weather that we are experiencing. So ugly as it is, what will happen is the best thing to do about the burned growth is to leave it to be. Dapat pabayaan lang daw siya. And then you're going to provide water, yung sabi kanina, you have to provide water in order for the plants to recover from the heat damage of foliage. Regular deep watering, weekly application, can also help the plants to recover aside from yung mga fertilizer. Kasi usually ang ginagawa ng mga planters, ang natural instinct natin, kung merong mga damage caused by heat foliage damage, pinuputol natin yung mga nalaya na, no? And you have to think that is a very big no-no in order for the plants to recover. Dapat ang gagawin natin is, we are going to wait, hayaan na lang natin yung mga, hindi natin patuloy yung mga damage heat na mga leaves. And then i-water lang natin in order for the plants to recover. Kasi what will happen is, kung putulin natin, di ba? What will happen, putulin natin yung mga leaves na mga damage, mayroong tutubo na bago. What happened to that would stimulate the new growth from the lower stem. Stem, nasa lower stem. So what will happen, those new growth cannot resist much of the heat. No? It can cause damage, mamatay ang tanom kung yung putulon. So dapat yun ang gawin. Okay, that is for trivia. Let us discuss about the oxidation reaction. Ito yung topic natin. No? And target natin is explain oxidation reduction reactions, and appreciate the importance of principal sources of energy in this plant, both natural, biological, artificial, through citing examples, and participate in class. Okay. And we have here the importance of biological principal sources of energy on this planet, both natural and biological, artificial. So what do you notice in the picture? Okay. What are the similarities and differences of the two pictures? Nakita niyo sa picture, we have the presence of sunlight and the flowers, and then we have what we call the food chain, no? Explain natin pertaining to the bird. Okay, this is what we call energy from the sun, fuels life on Earth. Take note, yung life on Earth begins with because of the presence of sunlight, yung light energy. So the continual input of energy, most likely from sunlight, sustains the processes of life. Sunlight allows the algae, mga plants, and other mga bacteria in order to use photosynthesis. And it is sad thing to say na hindi natin naabutan discussion about photosynthesis and cellular respiration. Kulangin na tayo ng oras in the first sem, no? And sunlight is a initial step in order for the plants to produce food, no, through the process of photosynthesis in conversion of the carbon dioxide. Na carbon dioxide kasi nasa atmosphere. Yun ang kinukuha ng plants, ng chlorophyll. And then they're going to get carbon from the carbon dioxide and water in order to convert that to organic compounds like mga carbohydrates. Kaya meron tayong mga bunga. That is the start of life, no? Kasi carbon is yung backbone of life. Lahat ng mga living organisms they contain what we call carbon. Yun ang backbone ng life, living organisms. Lahat ay merong carbon except for mga non-living organisms. Okay? But there are exceptions sa mga exceptions mga organisms. There are small portions of viral organisms, species of organisms, that do not rely on the presence of sunlight in order to produce their own food. Merong mga ganon na mga organisms. Those organisms live in the extreme environment like sa mga hydrothermal vents. Yun sa hydrothermal vents na sa mga volcan, no? Sa mga very deep floor of the oceans, sa deep caves, sa mga caves na hindi na sila maabot ng sunlight. Merong mga ganong may mga bacteria, mga fungi, and we have mga different plants na hindi maabot ng sunlight. They do not get energy from the sun in order to produce their own food. Ang kinukuha nila doon, yung mga chemical compounds that are present on their surroundings kasi hindi sila maabot ng sun. We have what we call yung other alternatives na hindi siya photosynthesis. Kasi ang photosynthesis starts with the sunlight. Yun ang ginagawa na sa form of alternative way in order for them to get to produce their own food so that they can sustain living mga different fungi, mga bacteria na hindi aabot ng sunlight. Example of that one, we have the methane, we have the hydrogen sulfate, mga sulfur dependent ng mga bacteria. So they get energy from the sulfur in order to convert that into their own food form of energy. So doon sila kakuha. Energy flows through all life on Earth. Like this one, we have the food chain of water birds, no? We have this one, and food webs show how energy moves throughout the system. Itong picture na ito. So plants use energy from the sun to create yung organic matter, like carbohydrates, protein, nucleic acids, and fats. Doon nag-umpisa yan. Plants are eaten by, ito yung meron itong may mga araw-araw, firstly eaten by yung plants, eaten by primary consumers, no? And then so on. And then yung primary consumers will be eaten by secondary consumers, and then at the top of the food chain, ito halimbawa yung eagle, sila yung last na kakain, no? This is like a chain. So you have to take note that in each step of the food web, food chain, the energy was originally emitted by the sun, and then consumed by yung plants. And then the energy is dissipated in each step. So animals use up 90% of energy consumed in the food. Yung sa primary, kapag kainan yung plants, 90% of energy coming from the food, yung kanyang kinain, gagamitin ng kanyang katawan. What is left is yung 10%. The 10% na iwan will be available for the other consumer. Pagkakainin siya ng secondary consumer, so 10% na lang yung naiwan. So it denotes that the efficiency of the energy in the food chain decreases as it go upward. Yun ang nangyari. So it points out that the distribution of the energy in human food is very limited na lang siya, no? Kasi ang tao is on the top of the food chain mo ng tao. That's why we are recommended to eat the plants directly in order to have the most efficient way for humans to acquire energy. Para meron tayong 90% na makuha energy from the plants in order to nourish our increasing human population. So, yun ang nangyayari. Okay? But these ideas are also introduced in yung origin of organic matter that later can become mga fossil fuels, yung form of energy. So let us discuss that as a side knowledge, no? So yung original source of energy in the fossil fuels, yung fossil fuels yung kinukuhaan nila ng mga ng mga crudo, no? Usually galing sila sa mga fossils sa Middle East. Yung mga fossil fuels are coming from mga sunlight, which fueled the photosynthesis. Yung early natural gas came from yung photosynthetic na planktons, nagiging fossil na sila under the ocean. They become preserved because of the sediments, and then they are chemically altered in order to make yung hydrocarbons. Kasi lahat ng mga fuels are made of hydrocarbons, hydrogen and carbons, combination of hydrogen and carbons. Like sa mga coal, no? Mga coal, yung mga coal mining, usually they came from mga plants na nahimo sila mga sediments, naging compacted and nagiging preserved. Yun yung mga source of energy. But initially, they were coming from the sun. Okay, let us go sa core values muna ito. Kasi lahat tayo mayroong core values sa Notre Dame. And the Maris core values or preference for the least favored. What programs do we have to show for the preference of the least favored? As a Maris student, why do we need to incorporate values in our work and life? Anong ginagawa natin during December 8? 12-11 at 12-12? Anong ginagawa natin every December 8? Pastoral Day, di ba? Anong ginagawa natin sa Pastoral Day? Preference for the least favored. Ibig sabihin, mga privilege tayo. Na tayo kwarta gamay, nakaangata sila, so you help the least privileged people. No? Ano ginagawa natin? Kinukuha natin yung mga elementary naman, no? Pinapapunta natin sa school. Sa grade 11, you experience this one. Nagbibigay tayo ng advance gift for Christmas, no? Pinapakain natin. We did mga different programs sa kanila, no? And preference to the least favored is to be with those who are exclusive from the mainstream of the society, yung na-deprive in relation to health, mga family life, usually mga abandoned, no? And usually abandoned, deprived from schooling because of low socioeconomic status and educational values, no? So involve participation in the community, involve compassion to those who are deprived of economic status, health status, family life, and spiritual opportunities. So that's why we immerse into exposure and immersion with the poor sectors of the communities, yung tinatawag natin na solidarity. So how is it related sa ating topic na? Para tayong nasa highly privileged or privileged tayo, and then we have under us, we have the least favored. Kaya we share blessings, no, to the least favored. So we share like that, like we discussed about the food chain. We get energy from them, and we also return a portion of energy as a source of blessing in the name of mga food. Ganun siya. Okay. Di pa tayo dumating sa klase natin. Okay, let us discuss what you mean oxidation reduction, or what we call in the short term. We have what we call yung redox. This is a type of chemical reaction involves in the transfer of electrons between the two species. This is two species, or it can either involve atom, molecule, or ion exchanging by gaining or losing an electron. So redox reactions are common and vital in every basic functions of life. Example, photosynthesis, cellular respiration, combustion, or rusting, or corrosion. So this form of chemical reaction involve yung oxidation reduction reaction. This is fundamental in terms of this kind of processes in biology and chemistry. We have spontaneous redox reactions are generally exothermic, and we can use the release energy as a source of energy for other application. When we say exothermic, ito yung mga release of energy from the chemical reactions or any reactions. Exothermic, lumalabas sila. Di ba kung mag-exercise kayo, and then you exert heat, and then the heat will be released into the atmosphere. Yung energy is a form of heat, kaya meron tayong tinatawag na heat energy. So in your physics, ibang energy is not lost, but only matransfer lang siya, o makreate lang siya in another form. The heat can also be a form of energy, no? Magamit din siya, no? Sa solar energy, magamit din sa mga different appliances. We have redox reaction, abbreviation, oxidation reaction, or what we call redox, reduction oxidation. So what is this redox reaction? This is a quick na definition. No? Oxidation reaction oxidation reduction reactions. This is all about the electrons move between atoms. We got the atom A, we have the atom B. There is what we call the electron E, symbolized by E. Lumabas siya sa atom A, and then it received by atom B. So definitely there is what we call the redox reaction out of this process. Okay, to further understand what we mean by redox, let us have this specific explanation. When you say reduction, that is gaining of electrons. Oxidation, that is loss of electrons. Do not be toying with the idea, yung common understanding natin ng reduction, di ba? When you say reduction, nakulangan sa layman's term, no? But in chemistry and biology, when you say about reduction na dugangan, this is gaining of electrons. Oxidation is losing of electrons. So biology and chemistry. So let us take a look with what's happening between atom A and atom B over here, no? sa ating illustration. So atom A is oxidized Kasi siya nung nagbibigay ng electrons. Oxidized siyang tawag sa kanya. So atom B is reduced, or what we call reduction, because atom B is gaining electrons from atom A. Ito ang ibig sabihin ng oxidation reduction. So oxidation is oxidized and reduction is reduced. Reduction, gaining of electrons. Oxidation is losing of electrons. And do not just rely on the idea kasi when you say oxidation, it should be with the presence of oxygen. Okay, meron man ganun because of rusting, di ba? Merong magtaya siya because of the presence of oxygen. Pero hindi lahat ng ganun. Masasabi na natin oxidation kung merong loss of electrons. They are oxidation without using oxygen para maging ma-oxidize siya. Basta the general meaning of oxidation in biology and chemistry is losing of electrons. So we have here, usually when you're reducing, sa inyong simple term, when you are reducing something, you will get less of it. But so here's one thing that might helpful to think about. So electrons have negative charge. Ganun naman yung electrons. So electrons is a subatomic particle inside the atoms. So what happens here? So as you add electrons into something, the charge goes down. The greater electrons, the lower the charge. Ganito nangyayari. So the electrons are gained, the charge, meaning to say reduce. Umagad kay electrons sa atom, so mag-lower ang kanyang charge. Kaya mo na siya sa picture, no? So that might be helpful sa inyo to get in mind and to have a little bit of sense on the greater picture. Ganito siya. Do you understand, no? Kung mag-gain siya electron, negative charge ng electron, so mag-lower ang charge of the atom. We have gaining of electrons, reduction, losing of electrons, we have oxidation. Just to expand the explanation, to learn one or both of this, it will be a great way for you to remember kung meron tayong mnemonics, no? Okay, what oxidation is and what is reduction. So oxidation reduction happens in all sorts of chemical reactions. Now, they are a super important thing that happens in everything, everything we do inside our body. Sa halimbawa sa cells natin. We have this one, oil rig, meaning oxidation is loss and reduction is gain. Leo the lions is meaning loss of electron, negative electron charge, E, negative, is oxidation, and gain of E is reduction. Ganun niya kasimple para maintindihan niyo. So let us take an example. This is an example na sinasabi kanina. The combination of sodium and chloride to form what we call yung table salt, no? Salt maning NaCl. Wala siyang presence of oxygen. Pero matatawag pa rin siya na oxidation because oxidation in general sense is yung losing of electrons. Okay, we have the sodium and the chloride. When you're going to put it together, as I mentioned, it becomes what we call sodium chloride or table salt. They are what we call ionic compound. When you say ionic compounds, they have what we call negative or positive charge. Yeah, they are made of ions, ionic compound. So especially the sodium is positive 1, the chloride is minus 1. So the ions are combined together or they have the opposite charges. Ganun naman yun say. Ganun naman sinasabi na opposite attracts kung negative and positive, so they combine to each other, no? And take note, before the combination, we are going to look into the separate na element ng ion. Yung sodium and chloride, they do not have charges. Wala pa siyang combination. They end up to get some charges when they stick together, when they combine together, magkaroon siya ng charges. So what will happen to this? Sodium and chloride are electrically neutral na atoms on their own. when you do separate thing, no? Kung separate sila na entity. So after the sodium gives ang kanyang electron to chloride, what will happen? The sodium becomes positive 1 and the chloride becomes negative 1. And I don't know bakit ganito ang ginagawa ng mga chemistry. Kung magdugang ka, magkaroon siya ng negative sign. Kung mag-give ka ng electron, magiging positive sign. Kanya sodium is positive, Cl is negative. Ganito ang nangyari. So the product is Na plus Cl negative. So this is the process to start with electrically neutral na atoms until they have yung specific charges, no, when they combine to each other. Okay? Ganito siya. Negative, neutral, electrically neutral charge, and then karoon silang charges upon combination. Usually, degree of oxidation of the reaction is patterned with the negative and positive charge, no, of the atom. Usually, ang term oxidation state is often used with the oxidation number. So above, NaCl is 0, it means no charge, and then naging charge siya because of the combination. Okay? Okay, do not be confused ha. Kung mag-add siya, naging negative ang sign. Kung mag-minus siya, I mean to say, give electrons to an ion na chloride, magiging positive yung sign. Okay, we have this one. Let us proceed with the chemical equation. Let us start with the chloride. So to show the reduction of the chlorine, the neutral na chlorine then receives electron, it will turn into chloride na negative. So for the sodium. So the sodium minus an electron which gives it, magbibigay siya ng electron, it will become positive. Ganito ang nangyari. So you are going to write negative portion, and again, to write the reduction, assuming to say it gains ang electrons, and electrons would move out, it means become oxidized. Okay? Balik-balik na explanation. Okay, to further analyze this one, ganito ang nangyari in the oxidation. We have this one. There are two processes involved in the equation, di ba? Anong two processes? Losses of electrons and gaining of electrons. So mean to say, in this reaction, oxidation reaction, we have what we call yung half reactions. Kasi yung half reactions pertaining to one reaction is oxidation, another reaction is reduction. Ito yung ibig sabihin ng half reactions. So in every oxidation reductions, like in UCl, you can write two reactions, one for oxidation to take place, and one for reduction to take place. It means to say they always happen together. This is what we call yung half reaction pertaining to oxidation and reduction, kaya half reactions. Okay? Actually, this is this is introduction of reduction oxidation reactions, no? But this is a very difficult topic, no? Shallow lang na akong gi-introduce lang na ako because oxidation reaction usually is widespread among the mga important biological processes in biology like photosynthesis or respiration sa cell. We have the rusting and also with yung combustion. Yung magsigang, magkaroon ng fire. So finally, we have learned about the redox reaction, always to have happened at the same time. One will gain electron, mag-gain siya ng electrons, and then gets reduced, which means that other atom will have to lose ang kanyang electrons and what we call gets oxidized. Ganito muna yung summary about oxidation reaction. Okay? Hanggang ganito lang. Any questions? Your module is now available, no? Meron kayong ipapasa na enrichment, no? To be passed on Saturday. Okay, gawin nyo na yun sa Saturday. Naipass nyo sa Saturday. Questions?
Wala na, sir.
Do you understand? Madali mo lang siya naintindihin. Questions about redox, oxidation, reduction, reaction? Sige daw. Just a summary. Frigiliana, sige daw. Ingon, what do you mean by redox? Frigiliana. Ikaw, Podoria, wala. Delonto, Militante, Molina, wala na. Ofalda. Pustol, Chan, Clara, wala. Damasco. Mansibad. Bebete, Punay. Questions? Do you understand? Reaction, oxidation. Wala na, Hidalgo.